Okay. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome again to another episode on Talk Architecture. And we're still on the series of women architects in leadership roles. And today I have a really special guest, which is architect Lillian Tay. Hi, Lillian.
Hi, Hadiaziyati.
We're going to have an interview with
Here.
you. And I'd like to go and read your bio a bit so that people will get to know you. And architect Lillian Tay is vice president of Veritas Design Group, one of Malaysia's leading architecture firms, established in 1987. Lillian was trained at Princeton University and she worked at Kohn Pederson Fox in New York before returning home to Kuala Lumpur in 1991. Well, Lillian is the one that oversees design direction at Veritas, where the numerous award-winning projects on workplace, hospitality, and a variety of other buildings that she has concentrated on with her design philosophy or Veritas design philosophy. And some of the buildings that you would know are like the popular, iconic gathering place called the Saloma Link Bridge, bridging Kampung Baru to the other side near Jalan Ampang. You can also recall One Central, Menara Binjai, W Hotel. And coming up is the second tallest building in the world, designed by a woman architect, Lillian, which is the Oxley Towers, 77 stories. And Lillian is also busy with the Board of Architects Malaysia, where she is serving, and also she was the president of Pertubuhan Architect Malaysia, or the Malaysian Institute of Architects, in 2019 and 20. And and we congratulate Lillian for being the first woman architect to receive the PAM Gold Medal for Design Excellence in 2023, which is the highest honor awarded by Malaysian Institute of Architects, recognizing her contribution to the architecture profession. So, Lillian, when I look at something and I don't see the word female or disabled, worker, I got disabled worker award, but I don't feel that satisfied. I always want to go and get the award that doesn't have that says female or disabled. But that is really a big deal, getting a gold medal for design excellence. When when you're in this top position, when you're looking back at all this work that you have done, all this excellent works, and being in Veritas, what is the crucial, pivotal moment where you see that architecture is for you? Is it when you were in Princeton, or? But we would like to see more clearly on those times when there were challenges, but okay, I'm gonna make this, something out of it, something good out of it. So, architecture is for you all the time, or it was difficult at one point? Is it? You could start
Uh,
somewhere there.
well, I guess growing up, I always loved art, in school, drawing, even though it was always treated like a secondary subject, math was important, science was important, language was important, English and Malay. I was at the transition years, so we actually studied in English. So I love the language, actually. I love literature. And but now that you ask me, I feel as if in school art was treated like a secondary thing. I remember sometimes it was held on Saturdays, like
Hmm.
not in the
Yeah.
the actual week. And but I always enjoyed it. But then back in those days, one would be discouraged, or don't feel that there's a lot of support for you making a livelihood, a career out of being, let's say, an artist, a painter, or any of these creative industries. I think it reflects our age, the era we grow up in.
Right.
Today's world, the young people have aspirations that are really so wide and so wide ranging.
Right.
because of technology and because of how global the world is today. I mean, I still grew up in those old-fashioned days when every parent wanted their kid to be an engineer, a lawyer, a doctor, an
But not an
architect.
architect?
So, yeah, yes, an architect, less so, I guess. There's always doctor, or lawyers, right, or engineers, and then architect, yeah, a bit later. And teachers, they want their kids to be teachers. I think that's also very important. Um, I guess the traditional professions. So, I grew up at a time when there were no architecture schools. I mean, there was only one architecture school at UTM,
Okay.
a
Right.
very limited program, and that even started very late. I don't recall if it started when during my time or just around then. So it wasn't a course that is as widely available to pursue at that time. It's a long time ago, but like right now we have, I think, around 12, 10 to 15 School of
Right.
Architecture in Malaysia. But at that time, there was only the UTM program where you have to come in from, I think, after Form 5. So I wasn't in that stream. So it was something that was not easy to get to. And uh,
We were educated in UTM. I was in UTM diploma school, diploma course. We would, we had a couple of working drawings. We were more to do with getting the construction right. It was more of building technocrats at that time. I think we're in the similar era. And
mm,
yeah, I started with a local university. Now, I graduated in 1990. I came back to Malaysia. You came back to Malaysia in 1991, but you were working in New York.
mm.
And when you were working in New York, do you feel that there were sort of challenges for a female architect, a young female architect?
Oh no, I felt that it was no, I didn't feel that at all. I had also like superiors who were women actually. I
Hmm.
recall that. Of course, there are still fewer. Even in New York at that time, there were still fewer. Maybe the ratio was like 1 in 7 or 1 in 10 even. Back those days, I think tomorrow. I mean, today it will be a lot more it'll be a lot more equal, the distribution of not just women working in architecture, but women in positions of leadership working in architecture.
But
It
then
is
you
true.
came,
We've come a long, long way in the last 30 years that I've been in practice.
yeah, when you came back to Malaysia, to Kuala Lumpur, was there any challenges in that regard with as a female architect starting out in Malaysia?
Um, I not really. I think I didn't feel it because I just didn't want to think that they were, I guess. So I didn't approach every day, watching out for that. I just
Oh,
did
no.
what I had to do. But certainly there were no women bosses.
Okay. Yeah.
all your, your employers were men. When you go for interviews, there's not going to be a potential woman employer. That was clearly, yeah, there were very few. I
Well,
think there were quite a lot of sole proprietor women,
oh yeah.
women practices, perhaps, but the larger firms certainly I didn't see. Um, you know, at that time in the early 90s. Today, I think it's got a lot better, but we are still in the minority.
We're
We're
still on
still
the
in.
matter. Okay, let's talk about the day today. When you go to the office, um, do you give advice to younger architects that are women, or do you, create a culture in your company where um, we look out that for women architects or the women architects they need to go and sink or swim, like everybody else, you have to go and this is the construction industry or the architecture, engineering and construction industry in Malaysia, and you've got to work it out yourself how to negotiate this, male dominated industry as perceived. What do you think of this question, this line of questioning? Is it fair that I ask this?
Um, I I don't think that there is so much discrimination today because
Mm.
I think there are quite a lot of women in the workplace. I mean, they're still in the minority. Even in our office, I think it's still a bit skewed, maybe 60% men. They're a little bit, but not a vast majority anymore. But certainly the women are definitely not the majority. That's for sure. So simply still not in 30 years later from when I started working here. And if you think of women employers, certainly there are few, but there are some. There are some, but that's even fewer. I would think that women-led companies. Well, for Veritas, we are of course well, not a partnership, but a group practice. Um, but even among our directors, I'm still at the present time the only woman director out of I think 6 of us.
Okay.
So you can see that even in my company that there needs to be more parity, I think, in the gender distribution at the leadership level, leadership and ownership level.
There were some issues raised regarding maternity leave, but in general, in Malaysia, the government doesn't support long maternity leave like in some other countries. And there were also some issues raised about when women have this long working hours in which they need to go back to see their family, and they need to have flexibility from the employers to be able to go and shall we say take time off and then come back, or maybe to finish off the work. And there's also this issue of the distance of travel and how to take care of the family, juggling taking care of the family. I mean, there is a point in time in a woman's life where they need to go and think, biologically, I need to start a family, but then what happened to my career? Should I stop? Do you recall of any of these issues amongst your employees, and how do the Veritas handle this situation?
Well, I do believe that even till today, although a lot to a lesser degree than 20, 30 years ago, um, the there are still higher expectations that the household duties tend to fall more on the woman. It's
Yes.
still today that nothing has changed there.
Yeah.
Of course, there are a few husbands who love to cook, and they'll do the occasional cooking on the weekend for fun. But the day-to-day cooking, I'm quite sure is still primarily, if not mostly, um, a task, a task, a duty uh, that falls on the women of the household, whether it's your mother-in-law, your mother, or the daughter or the wife. It tends to be so. The man, when they get to cook, they do the glory fun event on the weekend. That sort of thing. But the day-to-day grind of having to handle that among your other duties, whether it's a working mother or working woman. It still falls to the woman. So I think a lot of credit must go to every woman who has to juggle their work, in their workplace, and always have to do that extra, the larger burden of the work in the house. Whether it's cooking or the grind of the chores, and especially as you grow later, the care of elderly parents.
Yeah.
That's so not just the young children. Then after
Yeah,
the
later
kids grow
on,
up, many women end up having to also
take care.
spend time to take care of their grandparents, parents. So it doesn't get away until you yourself are very old and need to be taken care of. So
As a bigger company, you can tell your clients that you can advise your clients that you know eh, you need more time to finish the design or to deliver because you're more established, right? So there is less of this pressure perhaps on your staff to do to to all the time do overtime, and
No, no, not really. I think that's the same. It's the same whether even I think a couple wanting to do a house, they will still want to do it as fast as
Okay.
possible and move in. So it doesn't
So
make
the
any difference.
pressure is on. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, the large projects, the timelines are very tight, and you have to engage a big team. You have to mobilize a big team to move together. So you need to manage your resources to mobilize this big team, and then when that's done, they need to be redistributed because there are certain phases that requires more people, more hands on board. Early phases, the early phases
Okay.
of getting the design is usually a smaller group of people thinking it out, even not more than a couple of individuals, and ultimately may end up being more the work of one individual. But
Mm.
as the work develops, as we go into tender drawings and construction drawings, you have to build up the team. The design actually can be conceived by one person, in a day or two, but to output the documents that's needed to build something um, takes a lot of people to complete those documents for construction. I mean, we've got projects that are quite large, where that period to create the documents for construction, for bidding for construction, for tender, the drawing list is like 800, 900, sometimes 1,000 over drawings.
Mm.
And we have to schedule a team of no less than 15 to 25 people to just focus on doing those drawings over a period, usually around 4 to 6 months,
Yeah.
depending on the size, to be able to take it out so that it can be tendered and start construction. So that's the pace. That's typical in Malaysia. Everybody is in a big hurry to get to ground and deliver the buildings.
So, still under this topic of women architects. So, what is your advice before we wrap up for the first session? What is your advice to women architects in general, especially to fresh graduates out there, if they think that, uh, that they are thinking this is going to be tough going to site and having to deal with, they're not used to having to deal with solely, mainly male sort of consultants and contractors and so on. I mean, what is your advice if they think that is a challenge? They think the idea is that is going to be a problem or, having to cope with this. You never know, right? That this could be the perception based on what they've read.
Yeah, I don't believe it's any lack of ability or lack of, uh, well, it's not a lack of ability for the woman to do all the tasks that's needed from, initial design and going through to construction. It's more sometimes the expectation or the, sort of prejudice that people may think that, oh, you probably can't handle it. It's a bit too physically tough for you, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But Malaysians are generally kind. They tend to actually try to be more gentle to the women. And I find that's the case. And sometimes I say, no, no, it's okay. I can handle it. That's it's more likely. When you have to clamber up these temporary stairs
Okay,
and
okay. When
to
in
get
sight,
up
yeah.
to things like that.
Yeah. I
But
think it doesn't matter if you're a fresh graduate and you need to go and chair a meeting on site and people see you as a fresh graduate. It may, it's a fair game really if you're male or female, isn't it? I mean, because you're fresh, you may not be ready and not that knowledgeable, or you need help. So that is the case for fresh graduates.
mm, well, for us, we will give time for fresh grads to come in to learn. They wouldn't be handling a meeting on their own. They
Mhm.
will be
Mhm.
sort of guided by a more senior colleague, and we wouldn't expect them to take leadership right away on the scale. So, we would assign them to be under a team. And I think that's the good thing sometimes about being a larger practice. There's always a lot of, you know, uh, concern or prejudice even against larger practice, thinking that oh, you'll just be a tool in the whole machinery. But there is a lot of very rapid learning that can happen because there's so many senior experienced people around you that you pick up things very quickly from. So you grow very fast. I do believe that when you're working in a larger practice with a lot of seniors around you, you can get a lot of guidance very quickly on many aspects of the work. So learning, in terms of learning, there's a lot of benefit to working in a larger practice where there are a range of projects that you're not just necessarily learning from the project you're directly working on, but you will be seeing your other colleagues work on maybe different type of building or different scale of building, and you'll be learning as a team. And because we build the teams, as I mentioned, for making construction drawings, they may be put into a team just to do the construction drawings phase. So they get to experience the what's needed to create the drawings for much larger projects, though they may not stay on that project through the whole time from beginning to end. So there is a very rapid and intense learning that is afforded by being in a group practice. That yeah, so I'm a big advocate of that, because some people, I think, traditionally tend to think, oh, in a large practice, you'll be sort of pigeonholed into doing one small thing all the time. But I don't think that's really the case. Because the range, you learn not just from doing what you're doing, but collaborating with your colleagues, and we have things like design reviews where we pin up the project that a person or a team is working on, and everyone sits around and do a crit. Like every week, we'll choose new projects that going through certain design confirmation phases before major presentation to go through an internal crit, and it's an internal review, sort of internal quality control process as well.
Yeah.
So you're learning not directly just from your own project, but from your colleagues' projects. So I do believe you grow very fast working in a group practice, and seeing different typologies of building, because each building takes so long to grow. If you were just working on one, your two, I mean, a person is generally working on not more than 2 or 3 projects. But your colleagues will be working on other projects, other types of projects, other scales of project. So
when do you do your design reviews? Is it every month?
We every month we'll have at least 2, sometimes more, depend if it's a time when we have a lot of new projects coming in, there will be more. We usually do it before we confirm the general schematic design. Usually more at that phase.
Okay.
And of course, towards the end of a project, we also always have a office visit to the building that we've completed, so that everyone walks through and they can, learn from some of the challenges that were faced in implementing some of the designs that came out on paper, things like that. And hear from the contractor side. If we think our work is hard drawing it, it's so much harder really for a contractor. I have the highest respect for contractors, I mean, sometimes I think traditionally people tend to think that they are these contractors who just have to follow your instructions. But indeed, they are, I mean, on the contrary, you actually learn a lot from contractors and builders who are actually building the work, putting the things together and making it work. Because drawings often tend to be missing some things, and when you actually build it, they will be the final resolution of getting it built and done, that you learn from seeing the contractor. So you're learning from the contractor.
I heard about this as well from Aisha when I interviewed her, that you're learning from other people a lot, and that's great. Anything that you like to say with regard to what we discussed before I finish this session, the first part?
Um, well, I think generally, I think women should no longer be thinking that that there's a lot of prejudice. There is some, but it's very quickly, swept away, or it's very quickly put aside once you focus on what you do.
Yeah.
We are all equal. We are all equally capable, and that will be quite visible. And one should be try to be as fearless and make a point to prove them wrong if there were some around who still hold those
Okay.
old school, old world
Thinking of
prejudices. Yeah,
yeah.
and it's not unkind. Some of them are actually doing it kindly. They think, oh, okay, you probably need some guidance or
Yeah.
literally a helping hand to walk past a pile of rubble. But yeah, it's not unkind, but they tend to be protective even
Okay.
of a woman architect, designer, or woman engineer on the site.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you for the first session, and I'll see you in the second session soon.
Hey,